Hello, everyone. It's Jerry at the Fledge, and welcome to another episode of Every Damn Day. Today I'm down in the sanctuary. We are at episode 363. I don't know. I have mixed emotions right now. I don't want to stop, but I need a break. And we've got two more episodes after today. We'll be ending up with CISO on Saturday, and super excited about that. And as you know, I always give a shout out to thisent.com and the champ Joe Walker for everything he's doing for the community and what he's doing for us with these episodes. And I'm wearing a shirt that my daughter gave me that just says green eggs and ham on it, as kind of a shout out to literacy and childhood or early childhood development. And I want to shout out Judy Keeler inside of the Lansing government. She's the chief strategy officer for what she's doing with the Bloomberg grant and getting us into the top 50 in the world communities that might win $1 million to help with literacy. So thanks for doing that, Judy, especially with some of the other obstacles that might be surrounding all of us. So a real rock star, I think, in the city of Lansing's government. And now I want to bring on my guest because I'm super excited to learn a lot more about my new friend, Lhauren. How you doing, Lhauren?
Hi, Jerry. I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing great. So what you been up to today?
Today, I've been working on some boring stuff, but exciting for what it will turn into. All of the admin, messaging type of things today.
Yeah. I've been working on NFTs. Do you know what those are?
No, what is that?
Like a non-fungible token is what it stands for, and it's a cryptocurrency thing. We're about to do something that nobody in the world has ever done, and we're super excited about it. So I don't know if we can see Mark in the background working diligently, but he's writing the software for it right now that's going to make it all happen.
That's amazing.
So in the next few days, I hope to release that. So. But back to you. Who do you want to give some shout outs to?
I'd love to. Well, you stole my first one. My favorite guy, one of my favorite guys, Joe Walker from the CNT, the champ, the word heavyweight champ. And then Michelle Lawrence from Socialite Society. I'd love to shout her out. She is opening a bookstore. It's an online bookstore right now. She has a book club, and her whole mission is to center, and really platform Black authors, Black female authors.
Wait a second. Where's she doing this? How come I don't know this person?
You have to meet her. So she is, she has a display downtown right now outside of Socialite or Social Sloth Cafe. And then she was at the Afterglow Market. If you look her up on Instagram, it's Socialite Society. And you can learn more about what she's doing, but she's amazing, doing amazing work.
Mila Lynn had a Black Book Fair at the Fledge a few months ago, and it was spectacular, and I think it is such an important thing. You're actually going to make me say something that I have planned, and I'm not going to say it, but it's so very important for us too.
It is.
And it reminds me of what these guys did. The Dr. Seuss kind of corporation or whatever owns it now. They went through and self-edited some of the books that they thought were inappropriate and pulled them off the shelves. I thought that was a great idea. Because
great. Yeah.
We're all still learning, right? And, we all have blind spots, and we got to find them and take care of them.
And it's amazing, even as a Black female, like how, or Black woman, how I didn't even notice that some of the things, like the racial undertones of some of the things in his books, because you're so used to negative messages about us. So I was very, very happy that it was brought to the forefront and they took those out of rotation. Yeah.
That just dinged my heart a little bit. You're going to make me cry during the show probably because, that saying that you're so used to the negative about you, that's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But we already know that these systems are breaking hearts every single day and breaking people. So Let's get into you a little bit. Where were you born and raised, and where'd you go to school? And I don't know, what's your deal?
Yeah, so I was born in Muskegon, Michigan. My whole family's from Muskegon. Joe Walker, he's from Muskegon. He's been in Lansing a long time. So born there, raised in Lansing. Primarily, I spent a lot of time in Muskegon, spending a lot of time with my family. So I always called that home. But as I grew up, I started to realize Lansing really did shape me in many different ways. So I went to school. I started out kindergarten at Lansing Christian for 1 year. They did all day kindergarten, and my mom was a single mom. And so we had a couple of friends that we knew. And with her not being from here, it was like, you go where you know people. So I spent the first year there, and the rest of my elementary years I spent at Kavanaugh Elementary on the south side. Went to Gardner Middle School and loved Gardner. And then my parents were about to get married. My mom was single until I was 14. So she and my bonus dad got married my first year of high school and moved out to East Lansing. I went to Okemos High all through those 4 years.
All right.
Yeah.
So I went to Kendon. You know where that is, if you know where oh, you don't know?
I don't.
So at the corner of Kavanaugh and Pennsylvania is Kendon.
Oh,
yeah. So right down the street from where you were at.
I've ridden my bike through there a bunch of times and never paid attention to the name of the school.
Yeah. So I grew up on the south side too.
Okay.
But probably, and I went to Gardner as well, but I also went to Riddle and I went to Atwood on the south side. But yeah, but I doubt we were at Gardner together because I think you are much younger than me.
Possibly, yeah.
So, what? So you go to Okemos and you graduate from Okemos or whatever, and what'd you do after that?
So after that, well, actually, it kind of started before I ended. I started working for my family's construction and remodeling company my senior year as a bookkeeper. So after that, I just kind of continued into that, went to LCC for a couple of years and realized that I really loved working. And so I took a couple of years off and just spent time trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I come from an entrepreneurial family. And so I loved learning, but I also knew that I needed to know what I wanted to study before I really dug into school. And so I ended up getting into sales because I loved talking to people. I love people. And so I got into insurance actually for quite a few years and loved that. I learned so much about the city at that time. I think that's really when my heart really grew for Lansing was when I was an insurance agent and meeting a lot of the families and leaders here in my time there. And then I ended up getting into the nonprofit sector. Because of what I kind of learned and grew in love with as my time as an insurance agent.
So man, there's so many questions woven in there. Was bookkeeping at all an interest to you?
No.
I'll start with that.
It wasn't, but I'm decent with numbers. And so business was always an interest to me. And my parents were like, hey, she's smart. She knows numbers. She can learn a lot about how to run a business and, some of the ins and outs of that. They knew that I would put everything into it. And so they took a big chance on a 16-year-old girl and having me run their company books for a while. I had a lot of professionals that I leaned on and learned from during that time, but definitely it wasn't a passion. I think my passion in bookkeeping was what it meant for my family and what it meant for the families that the company helped take care of. So, yeah.
So when you were a little kid, you're at Kavanaugh. What'd you want to be?
So many things. So many things. I wanted to be an inventor. I wanted to be an engineer. I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to have an art store. I wanted to own a spa and a salon. I wanted to just be a boss. I wanted to do so many things in a short period of time. I think at one point I wanted to be a singer. A little bit of everything.
I had these NFL dreams because I played football. I wanted to be a Olympic wrestler. That really drove me for all the way through college, actually.
Wow.
But the number one thing I wanted to be was a window washer, like a skyscraper. I wanted to go way up on buildings and wash windows.
That seems like it would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, some people would be terrified of it, and some I'd probably be terrified, but
Yeah.
I like adrenaline.
Yeah. That's not how I would choose it, but I definitely can see how that would be a lot of fun.
So how do you think that your childhood or growing up in Lansing, East Lansing, how did that affect how you engage with your nonprofit, or when you got into the nonprofit world, if you will? How did your childhood kind of affect that?
Oh, that's such a good question. A couple different ways. So I grew up as a church kid. I grew up in the church, and so I spent a lot of time volunteering. Like the church I grew up in spent a lot of time like pouring into the community and doing a lot of outreach, and so I loved that. I learned from a lot of professional women specifically that were college professors and business women and teachers, educators. And so that was a big part of my life. And because of the way that I grew up with a single mom and just seeing the value of your friendships, your relationships, the people you cultivate, these really important bonds with, no matter what configuration you have at home, I think that's what really kind of like sparked a love inside of me for people and valuing people and understanding how important people are, everybody is. And then if we fast forward just a little bit of time, I actually was a student of our main program when I was a freshman in high school. I had 2 very eventful years of just making a lot of choices that didn't necessarily give me the best outcomes. And I ended up sitting in my health class with this group of people coming in talking about sexual health and relationships and everything. And those were the 2 things that I had the most problems in. And it ended up shifting my perspective in a way that actually really set me on course to where I am today, where I was able to process things a lot better. I was able to get back into viewing myself better and wanting to see that for others. So that's really kind of what kind of turned me in the direction that I am now.
This is such a weird question. I'm sorry about this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So many people can be really positive about other people or really negative about other people. I think I already know the answer, that you're probably really positive about it. But were you always like that?
No. No. I naturally, yes. Naturally, I always loved people. I was always the kid that, would play with anybody on the playground. My mom was always very, very big on that. My great-grandparents actually taught us a lot about valuing people. We saw them keeping an open door to anybody. There was actually a homeless shelter like not far from their home. And it was like, yeah, these people were homeless, but they always knew that they could come and they could have lunch and sit and talk in the dining room with Dewey and Granddaddy and whoever else was at the house at the time. And so I always had kind of a really positive outlook on people until I was hurt by people. And I forgot that we all have our own issues and we all cope with them in different ways. And so I had a few different years where I had a really negative outlook on people and forgot that, people are imperfect and that's okay, but that doesn't mean that they're not beautiful and they're not, worthy of care and love and grace, really. So,
grace. Yeah. So important is grace.
Yeah. Yeah.
What changed that for you? Was there a particular epiphany that you had, or was it just a gradual thing, or you got back rooted with your grandparents maybe?
I think it was definitely like healing, like my heart healing from some of the wounds and things from people and keeping things in a proper perspective. But then also, I think that's probably the biggest thing is as I healed, I was able to look at people differently. And also when I was able to look at myself and be a little more realistic about who I am as well. That I've probably hurt people too, and that doesn't mean that I'm not valuable and that I'm not, somebody that can be of worth something to somebody else or bring value to somebody else. I think that really did shift my view on people. I spent a lot more time listening to people closely.
Yeah. I always think, nobody's ever really born to be, this isn't really a swear word, but it kind of is, but nobody's really born to be a jackass. Nobody's born to be mean, and nobody's born to so many things that we can say, but we do it to each other. We knock each other off tilt and all of that. And I think having that experience, because I was broken in a bunch of ways too, and it took my healing and it took me somewhat to realize that every other person that I'm dealing with, even if they are a jackass, they weren't, and we did something to them as a community, as a society, and all we have to do is find out where they are and walk with them and help them if we can, or just be with them, whatever they need.
Yeah, people give what they have, and if they don't have it, they can't give it. I always say, we do things based off of what's on the inside of us, and sometimes what's on the inside of us is really crappy, and so we're going to do some pretty crappy things. And so I think realizing that really helps, where you're able to, again, extend a little bit more grace. I don't get it right every time. I can be a little spicy, but I try. I try hard.
I try to get through one day at a time, just trying to be as kind as I can, but I can be not that. So let's get into Aspire Relationship Education a little bit. Tell us about that.
So we are, we're a Greater Lansing nonprofit. We're based in Lansing, and we primarily provide presentation programs centered around sexual health and relationship education. So our main goals is to educate, equip, and empower individuals to make positive choices and have healthy relationships. And by doing workshops or classroom presentations or providing, different things that remind people of the characteristics of healthy relationships, what to look for when it comes to unhealthy relationships, how to have support, the value of support. That's what we do. We're very, very multifaceted in our approach, but our base is all around sexual health and relationship education.
And so, man, we didn't talk about this. I hope it's okay. You can always say I don't want to talk about this.
Yeah.
But I hope this is an okay question. So if you grow up in a church and you're a believer and you have this faith, and then you're talking about, I don't know, sex ed type of stuff, is there a conflict there? Is that where you grew up in a church that wanted to be educated, that wanted to have that out there? Because a lot of churches try to hide all this and they don't want to talk about it, and it creates problems for us, right?
It does. So, and I think that is one reason why I'm able to show up the way that I show up in the classroom, or even as we're writing curriculum, because I grew up in the church, and historically the church would often focus more just on the faith aspect of things, or what the Bible says as far as, God's design for different things surrounding, sexuality. And so there was this kind of purity movement. But what was unfortunate is everybody's kind of faith journey is different. And so, you hope, as a parent, I know my mom hoped that I would, carry on the faith that she taught me, and I would be, rooted in the faith that I grew up under, but I didn't necessarily always do that. I didn't make choices that aligned with that. And so I actually had a program that I went through when I was 12 that was very much super purity focused. It was kind of a little scary and everything else. And I decided, because of what I saw in my family and some of the patterns I saw in my family, that I wanted to wait to have sex until I got married. But I didn't have any of the practical tools or even the scientific basis for my decision. And so my story helps me to be more compassionate towards others, and honestly a little bit more realistic about who I'm going to be talking to in a classroom, and that I need to really provide some scientific, medically accurate information, and then practical tools, and then giving them the opportunity to just decide what they want to do with it, and hope that they're happy with their outcomes, but remind them that if they're not, they can stop and start over. That's the joy of life. Every day we wake up, we have a fresh start. So
Yeah.
I remind kids of that when we're talking about these things.
There's a lot of discomfort in our society around the subject, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I want to dive right into it with you. You okay with that?
Yeah.
So, first of all, and I promise you, I'm not trying to come at you sideways in any way. How important is it? Super important to teach kids early, like about all of this, so that they know the biology, they know what's going on, they know the emotions and the feelings that they're having.
Yeah.
Like, is that, and why is that important?
Because sexual health isn't necessarily just about your body. It's about how you view sex. And so I think it's really important to understand that sex positive isn't necessarily sex free, that we're just kind of free with our sexual choices, but that we are positive in our view of sex and the choices that we make surrounding sex and relationships, right? So I think it's important to start early, because we know that kids developmentally, like, there's different things that they can grasp onto that's going to help them as they age and as they get into adolescence. Like, I'm already starting with my kids on boundaries and consent. So before they come and they give me a hug, even me, and I'm like, give me all the hugs, give me all the kisses. But even with me, because consent's not a contract, I remind them to ask me, Mommy, can I give you a hug? And I ask them, Buddy, can I give you a hug? Right? That's consent. That's teaching them consent. Or if somebody tells them no, if they're playing, or I have 2 kids, so, they're 15 months apart. It's always a fight in my house, but it's always a lot of fun. But if the second that somebody says no, I'm like, they said no, that means stop. No, that's consent, right? But then also being able to say what they want too. So if I ask my kids for a hug and they're like, no, I don't want one right now. Okay, buddy, let me know if you change your mind. I keep it at that. And I think sometimes we forget that children are people, right? So, like, give them the dignity of being a person, and that's how you kind of start the conversation. Now, when it comes to even protective measures, so like teaching kids about anatomy, it's super important when you're doing that you're not teaching them all the, like, kind of cutesy. I think they're gross. They're grosser than the than the actual name.
I know.
But you teach them, this is a penis, this is a vagina, this is your no touch area, this is an appropriate touch, this is not an appropriate touch. All of those kinds of things are super important, and that's all sexual health. And as they're getting older and, different things, like, kids try to explore, and the way that you respond also trains them on how they're going to view that. So you have some people that have had these kind of, like, really strict, really kind of, we don't want to talk about it. We don't want to talk about it. Well, naturally, we're going to have questions as we get older. And so it's super important as parents or support people or whoever their grownups are to open the conversation, because statistically we know that they're the most influential people when it comes to the choices that they're going to make as they get older when it comes to sex and relationships. So yeah, it's the earlier the better, but age appropriate. I don't there are some people that believe it's appropriate to teach kids, like, how to have sex or the different types of sex. I disagree with that, but that's my own personal belief, but
to not teach the actual physical, how it all
the how-tos.
Yeah.
There's an age, right? I feel like there's an age, but we do see, like, in certain type of, like, cultures or different places, even different states in the US, we're seeing where there's like a lot of controversy around people wanting to teach kids how to have sex at, like, kindergarten, third grade. Like that is just opening them up to questions that they just can't even developmentally understand, really.
It's really strange you said that to me, but probably not from your perspective, but from my perspective. Do you mind if I tell you an early childhood memory that I have that relates to this? Somewhere in my, before maybe fourth or fifth grade, so I'm, 9, 10 years old, I somewhere learned that the penis went in the vagina, and that's how a woman could get pregnant. But I made up in my head that there must be some button in there that the penis pushes. Is this too graphic?
No.
And that's how a woman got pregnant. And I thought that for a couple years, maybe, until somebody educated me differently. And it was super confusing for me. It kind of like completed the story for me, though. So I had to guess. I was making up stuff during this time. I don't know. I don't even know why I said that, but that just triggered that memory. I forgot all about that until just now. But that's sort of dangerous too, right? For me to have this halfway there type of don't quite understand it.
Yeah. I see where you're going with that. I definitely cannot. Yeah, that would have confused me too. But I think once you get to that part of the conversation, then that's when you talk beyond that. You continue the conversation. If you're just giving half information, then you're leaving the door open for all the questions as you just shared. Yeah. So there's a way to do it though. There's definitely a way to do it where it's a protective measure, and that it's really to inform instead of like get kids in a way where they're wanting to do things that they don't really understand fully even why they're doing it, But yeah, I see where you're going.
I think I was one of those kids, but this is in the 70s. Sex education was not a big thing. Like my mother, when she was pregnant for me, had to leave Everett and go to a special school because you couldn't have pregnant teenagers mixed in with good society or whatever it was, that they were.
Yeah. My grandma was 16 when she had my mom. So I've heard stories. Yeah.
So, you said controversy. There's a lot of controversies in education, whether it's, critical race theory or sex education or all of this. I thought you were going to start leaning south, like to that one state that sounds like. Do you want to talk about that state or not talk about that?
I know what state. No, I'm not even going to go there.
Okay.
We'll be here all day.
Okay. But are you anti that or pro that? It'll help me set the tone a little bit.
Yeah. So
it's tough. I know. It's a bad question.
Because I don't necessarily, I don't identify myself on either side of the spectrum politically. My own personal beliefs is that life starts at conception. Now, when it comes to people's personal choices, like we can get into a whole different conversation on that because I have many different thoughts on that and beliefs when it comes to that. But as far as my own personal belief, as far as life and the importance of it, it starts at conception, but it extends until death. And I think that's where some of the issues arise when it comes to the conversation when you talk about it politically. So, yeah.
I think sometimes you'll see in different memes and social media or even the truth that they seem to care a lot down there. They seem to care a lot more about before you're born than after you're born, because they'll also cut out, early childhood development funding. They'll feed the school to prison pipeline, and actually it's now being called the cradle to prison pipeline, which is another ding to the heart, I think. But do you think so? There's a way to prevent all of this, right? And it's education. It's getting kids knowing the right thing at the right time.
Yes.
And there's some horrific stories. You know, someone gets raped, if that's all right for me to talk about in the show, and they don't want to have a child of rape. You know, that's a super complicated thing for all kinds of people on different, you know, from different spectrums and all of that. But there's also people who get accidentally pregnant, right? Like, I'm pretty sure my mom and dad hate this, but I was a mistake, right? I was definitely a mistake.
Surprise.
I was a surprise.
You're a surprise. You're not a mistake.
And maybe some education would have been better for both of them. Yeah. And I wouldn't exist now. I don't know if I like this outcome, but you know what I'm saying.
Bring us back. I'll bring us back. That's honestly one of the reasons I do the work that I do. Because the way I look at it is, you know, with this belief, I have this belief. I don't take these into the classroom. We don't talk about this in any sense. Really, this is my first time really talking about it openly.
Is it okay? Because I don't mind switching subject. Okay.
I don't mind. Right. I don't mind answering questions that are asking me really hardly ever. But one kind of, I guess, driving force in the work that I do is if we're able to provide, you know, holistic sexual health and relationship education to all youth, they're empowered to make the decisions that they want to make. They have the information to make the decisions that they want to make. So I know that if I had our program 1 year earlier, I would have made different decisions that wouldn't have caused me to get pregnant at 14, having a miscarriage and being super confused and trying to figure out how to cope with drugs and whatever else afterwards. I know that to be true because I know how it impacted me when I was sitting in that classroom. I know that some of the students that we see when we meet them, they have a ton of questions about anatomy or the how-tos or the effective rates of contraception or the purpose of it, or when do you have conversations surrounding your sexual goals or, you know, physical boundaries. There's so many questions. And if you don't have like a safe environment, you don't have a holistic approach to the conversation, then you have a lot more kind of surprises. You have surprise, you know, pregnancies, you have surprise STIs, STDs, you know, all these different things that can result that could have been avoided with a little bit more information. That doesn't mean that everything doesn't happen because, you know, we all find ourselves in different situations at different times, but that's one reason why, because I know how it does impact the choices that young people make, and people in general. So, yeah.
Is the other controversial thing that I'm going to bring up, and I hope it's okay, because I want to, this is your show. I want to be with you and be consistent with you. But is abstinence the only thing that, like you're saying, are you promoting that, or are you promoting that kind of holistic view?
So we're an abstinence-based state currently. So we are going to talk about abstinence. Abstinence is the 100% effective way to avoid unplanned pregnancy and STIs. The CDC says it is the most effective way. So based on that, yeah, we're going to talk about abstinence. But we're also going to talk through contraception because not everybody's going to choose to be abstinent. And if they're choosing to be abstinent today, it doesn't mean they're going to choose to be abstinent tomorrow or 10 years from now. Like, we want them to be empowered whenever they can make those decisions. But absolutely, yeah, abstinence is definitely a part of the conversation, and it should be. Just when you look at the numbers, it absolutely should be.
Well, I bet, you know, a lot of us probably look back on our past and have a bunch of regrets about different events that happened, you know, whether some people might call it a one-night stand or a drunken fling or whatever. So I think, you know, it is important because you never know what curveball you're going to get thrown or who's going to knock you off tilt from some belief system that you thought was solid. So I like this. I'm glad about this.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Well, and if you have, you know, you have somebody that says, hey, this is going to heighten your risk of these outcomes that you're telling me you don't want to have. then you might think about it twice before you make the decision. If you're under the influence of drugs or alcohol, you're probably more likely to make a decision that's going to put your risk of something a lot higher. You're probably not having the conversations that you should that are responsible prior to a sexual encounter. Like, hey, have you been tested? Have I been tested? What's the result of that, right? What are your goals? Like, what are your boundaries? Is this okay? Like, you're probably not having those conversations. And so those are all things that are important to think about, before we do things. And I think that's a part of the conversation. It should be a part of the conversation. Just get you to think a little bit more critically about some of those kind of drunken moments or
Yeah.
the oops moments.
I really like you're enabling.
Yeah.
And you can enable, you can still say this is the most effective, you can show the math, you can show the science, and you can still give that freedom of choice to that child.
Everybody. Yeah.
I mean, we
But
forget sometimes.
You're giving them a toolkit, right? Like
Yeah.
you're not just putting a bunch of wood in front of them and saying, figure it out. Like you're giving them the tools, you're showing them how to use them, and then letting them decide if they want to build a house. Like it's up to them.
Yeah.
That's real love, is giving people choice in the matter of what they're gonna do with their hearts and their bodies.
So what's a successful encounter with a kid to you?
Oh, there's so many. Successful encounters. Comments like, hey, I hadn't thought about this. Oh, wow, I'm going to talk to my partner about this when I get home. You gave me questions to think about. You made me feel good about my choice. You made me feel like I could make a more responsible decision next time, or I can take this to my friend. Probably I think the one that really tugs my heart the most is we tell personal stories. That's one thing that we do. So we're always open to people that want to become storytellers and come in and share their experiences with students. But my story in one of our districts, all the stories have to be approved before you're able to tell them in the classroom. And in, with the way that the process goes, like everything really does have to be approved before you present it in a classroom by the sex ed advisory boards. And in this particular district wants to approve each story. And so my story got denied like 3 times. It was horrible.
Your own personal story?
My own personal story, my own life got denied 3 times. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, just forget it. I'll just teach the program. I'll just learn. This was kind of my first semester in the classroom. And then finally, like a week before we were in the classroom, it was approved. We made a couple of tweaks. We took a couple of things out, added a couple of things in, and it was mainly like language and framing and whatever it may have been, or questions that they had. Well, we don't want them to have this question, so can you say a little bit more about this part, or that kind of thing. And so I was like, this is a labor of love. Okay, I will keep doing this edit. And we did it. And I told my story. And the first thing that I heard was, oh my gosh. It was one of the students that was on the student committee that voted for my story. Every student on the committee voted for my story, that they wanted it, which turned one of the votes saying, I can't say no when all the students want to hear them say it. And so they said, oh my gosh, I can relate so much to your story. Didn't you get your story denied like 3 times and you kept editing it and you kept sending it back? Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you said that, because that really just helped me understand some of the things that they had experienced in their life. And then there was one student that came up and talked to me about their story, and they said, this is the kind of thing that I want to teach to women in India, because they were first generation American and Indian, and they wanted to teach women in India some of the things that we had shared in the classroom, because they didn't have that information. And they said, I guess I asked them a question the day before. I tend to be quite curious, and I asked, what do you want to do? They had displayed something, and it made me think, hey, maybe this is what you want to do. And they're like, no, I don't know. And they said, you kept me up all night last night. And I was like, what are you talking about, kid? And they said, you asked me if I was an activist. And I told you no. And I really kind of shrugged you off. And they said, I thought about it all night. and I'm a senior, and I, didn't know what I wanted to do. You changed my life. Now I know what I want to do. I want to do the kind of thing that you do. I want to teach people, how to love themselves and how to make these decisions and give them information. That changed everything for me. And I said, you know what? I know personally the value of what we do, but I also know that it's worth fighting to do what we do. It's worth the fight. So, yeah.
So we're going to go for about 2 hours on this show. You're good with, no, I'm just kidding. But I have so many, I got to ask you one other thing, or I want to actually tell you something.
Okay.
Because first of all, that was amazing. What you just said, the impact that you can have, and how now what she might go and do, or he, you didn't actually say the gender, I don't think. But what they might go and do is just carrying on your legacy at some level, right? Or whatever your mission might be. The other thing is, you snuck it in there. You said 9th grade, and then you said when you were 14, and you got to kind of piece that together. But you've overcome some obstacles, and you have some personal experiences that kind of drive what you're trying to do, because I'm assuming you don't want anybody to go through what you went through. Is that a fair assessment?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. And then I want to tell you something that you did to me that was on your list of things that you taught me, and I'm questioning it, so I want to talk to you about it.
Okay.
I have a 20-year-old son, right? And if I ask him for a hug, I am never going to get a hug for the rest of my life. So, or not, at least until he's like 40 or something, right? Because 20-year-old boys don't want to hug their dad. So I just hug him. I'll come up from the side and hug him and all of that. Should I be asking him for consent every time? Or, I think he's a good man. I think he understands that concept. Yeah. But am I still...
I think it's different because that's a little bit of a gray area, because you're not necessarily teaching him. But I think if you have the conversation and let him know, hey, son, I don't want you to think that I don't respect your boundary by me just giving you a hug. So I just want you to know why I'm doing it. But if you tell me that you really don't want a hug from me, I promise I'll find another way to connect with you. I think that would really probably speak to his heart if he just really just doesn't want to hug. And that might actually open him up to probably give you hugs too. If you free him up a little bit, he might really for a hug.
All right. That's solid advice. And my daughter, it's a little bit different, because she already knows that, we hug each other, and that's going to keep happening. But all right, these are worthwhile conversations I could still have right now. Anybody out there could start to mimic that a little better, especially in, I feel sometimes like we're in the epicenter of inappropriate touching, inappropriate behavior. When we talk about NASA, or we jump over to Dr. Anderson at U of M. Yeah. And even I can't remember who it was at Ohio State. Probably Dr. Anderson bounced down there too. So solid advice that any of us could take and implement right now, today.
Great.
Right?
Yeah, so, I think so.
Thank you. Yeah. You made me think about something. You changed me, and I want to do a different action, because it is important. And maybe it's not the impact that I'll have on my son, but maybe it's the impact I'll have on my grandson or my granddaughter if he picks up that same thing. So I like it. I like it a lot. Awesome. But I'm still going to steal hugs. I just know I am. I need my hug from my son.
I understand.
Man. Okay. So now here's the second thing. We're talking about sex a little bit, right? Mm-hmm. But relationship, it's a lot bigger than that. And, it's not called the, Aspire sex education. It's Aspire relationship education. So there must be, you talked about holistic. What are some other things? Let's get off the sex thing for a minute. And
so when you talk about the relationship piece, like, that's one thing I always say. I don't care if people have sex, I care why. And so there's all these kind of other dynamics that can kind of lead us there. And so I'm like, let's look at the root, and the root is our relationships with ourselves, with others, how can we strengthen both of those? And so we really kind of take more of a social emotional learning approach when it comes to helping individuals build strong relationships with themselves. So learning who they are, what are their baseline character strengths, how to strengthen the ones that maybe aren't necessarily that strong, how to identify them in others, how to communicate with others, when to talk to others, valuing and prioritizing relationships, but with yourself first, because you can't really love somebody else well if you don't know how to love yourself well, you know? We talked about that earlier. We do things based on what's on the inside of us. Our relationships are going to be a reflection of what we believe about ourselves. And so that is the bulk of what we do. So we spend a lot of time talking through things that help bolster self-esteem, self-worth, and then also dignity, like knowing that you have dignity, others have dignity, and how that should impact your interactions with others and what you should expect for yourself and give to yourself. So yeah, I love that part. You could get me going. We will be here for 2 hours if you get me going on that.
Well, let me, sometimes it feels when we're talking here that we're talking to girls, but we're talking to girls and boys, right? Or just girls?
We're talking to everybody.
Okay.
Everybody, yep. I'm just kind of a girl's girl, so that's probably what you're getting.
Well, it's, how are you helping us boys? Because we can be vicious, and I mean, I don't mean to say that we are born vicious and we're this, but we don't understand. We're so stupid. I'm going to soon to say it. Representing what I grew up with, we were dumb about it, and we didn't know what we were doing. And, you know, we'd punch girls on the arm in 5th grade, right? And say, oh, yeah, you're a jerk. And it really means I'm super in love with you.
So much, yes. We try to just see people as individuals. You know, everybody kind of is wherever they're at. And so even in that, there was this kind of belief that all males are like kind of physical, more compartmentalized individuals, and girls are more of these like relational, like kind of like holistic type of individuals. And we really just kind of look at each person individually and kind of speak that way, you know? And so if I'm invited into an environment where it is primarily one sex, like all females or all males or whatever, they don't invite me with all the males. But every now and then, I had 2 times actually talked to all boys. It was funny.
Well, I got a whole bunch of boys that I could put in this room and have you come talk to that I think would be super interesting.
Yeah, well, and the good part about it is when you are sharing information that's transferable, it really doesn't matter who you're talking to, but it matters who you're talking to, you know? So you're looking at each person individually, then kind of this all-encompassing categorical approach.
So the boy could go home and teach his sister, or the sister could go home and teach the brother, type of thing?
Yeah.
All right. You know Tony Willis?
I do. I love Tony. He's my friend's husband. I mean, he's my friend too, but.
Yeah, I love Tony too. Such a great conversation and great person. Honest and open dialogue is how we build healthy relationships. So, and throws in with others and ourselves, because Tony gets it. Tony always gets it.
He does it well. It well.
Man, I want to. We're gonna get back to some of this. So, let's talk about what you do every damn day to push this forward, and maybe a little bit about, I think your personal story probably drives you.
Mm-hmm.
That's a given, I think. But, you know, maybe the result, actually forget that part. What do you do every damn day to push this all forward?
Share the message, build relationships, and do whatever needs to be done to get in front of as many people as we can. And
is that just children, or can you have an impact on well, you already had an impact on I'm old. I just turned 55. I got all kinds of new benefits and stuff.
Happy belated birthday.
Oh, thank you. And you had an impact on me. Do you ever talk to adults?
So we're getting so many requests for adults.
Because they
But
didn't teach us right. I wasn't brought up right.
that's the thing. And so that's what I'm putting a lot of thought to it and talking to my advisors about it. Because the reality is that we hear all the time, even from those that join us in our mission, they say, I wish I had this. I wish I knew this. Or I know that I didn't know this before I started working with you. And so it's kind of, it's uncovering this need. So eventually, I'm sure we will. But right now, we focus on adolescents, so ages 12 and up to 24 mainly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So another thing I want to talk about before we get into Daisy chaining the shows together, we're in a cancel culture, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or there is a big cancel culture. I hope I'm not in it because I don't believe in it. I don't think it's right. I don't think it heals us, and I think it's dangerous.
Yeah, I agree.
But how does, again, we can prevent cancel culture. We could prevent abortion by teaching people, educating people on, I don't know, how to act right. If that's, I don't know if I'd say it that way, but that's what popped in my head. What are your thoughts on cancel culture? And can people be reeducated? Can somebody who's done something bad, can they be reeducated, or do we just?
If they want to be, I think, it depends on it depends on everybody. They all can make their own decisions. I think where cancel culture can be really difficult is, somebody does something ignorant and then we cancel them and we really just kind of give them another reason to be more ignorant. Instead of giving them an opportunity to be accountable to whatever it is and decide and choose whether they're going to shift. I've had some pretty tough situations with people where I could have absolutely, canceled them and would have had every right and been warranted in it. But instead, I gave them an opportunity to choose. I had a conversation. But I think it also goes back to the relationship. Correction without relationship is harassment. And so if we don't try to build a relationship, then it's going to feel like harassment. It's going to give people more ammo, more reason, and feel like they have this kind of righteous cause to dig their heels in and be prideful about whatever it is that they were canceled for. But that's just my own personal belief in that. But then there's some people that, they probably should be canceled. So I'm not saying that it's not, but again, I think that's also, it's kind of a gray area. I think the whole, like, somebody did one thing one time and then apologized, well, cancel. That's not changing anything. Just kind of put more negativity out in the world. But
I want you to say this 100 more times, but not really. Correction without relationship is harassment.
Yeah.
Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Wow. That's a very powerful phrase. That's a very good phrase.
Thanks. I don't think I came up with that. I think I was taught that.
Yeah, I don't think I have been taught that. And I want to keep going on this for a moment, if you don't mind. At the Fledge, we're ingrained in many, many communities, from an LGBTQ or, young kids or, whomever. And within those communities, we see a lot of canceling, right? Somebody does something and it's horrific, or sometimes it's even small and maybe that one off that you were kind of talking to. Mm-hmm. But what I always think of is that, we are a venue, so we have a sound system, right? The victim gets the mic first and the victim gets the loudest volume. We always think that. But on the flip side of that other person who was involved, and we call them a victim machine, if we don't do something with them, if we don't help them, if we don't try to get them to a different spot, then in essence, what we're doing is recognizing that a tiger has been walking through our community. We have trapped them, we cancel them, and we put them in Grand Rapids, or we put them on the south side instead of the east side. And we just shift these victim machines around by canceling them. But if instead we embrace them and we tried to get them to a different spot, we would have less victims in the future. Am I Am I in the right space? Am I wrong? It depends.
I think
It's
there's
so hard.
without me knowing, I don't know all the data, but I think there's a lot of data that would support that approach. When you think about like reentry programs and different things like that, there's a lot of money that goes into that approach. So I think there's definitely a lot to support that being a good thing. Obviously, there will be some that will, there will be some that won't, and we don't know which one, but I definitely think it's worth a try.
And then I get called an apologizer. I get called, I get boycotted from time to time. I've never been completely canceled. Thanks. I don't know. I don't even know if I would care right now if I think I'm doing the right thing. But yeah, your quote though, going back to that, correction without relationship is harassment. I need to be careful in that space. I need to think that through, because I'm not like, oh, you're the victim. You got to come and talk to this guy so we can resolve this so our community's healthier. That's not fair to this person. That,
Yeah.
And have I said this on air? I'm a victim. I haven't talked about it ever.
Wow.
On air publicly. Have I? I don't think so. I'm an Anderson survivor.
Wow.
If you know who that is. The doctor from U of M that molested wrestlers and football players for over 20 years. And I hope I'm not, I might be gagged actually. I can't talk a lot about it because I might have a gag order on me to not talk about it. But, I'm pissed and I want to cancel a bunch of people. And it's conflicting with my non-victim. I don't know why I'm getting into this. Actually, I'm trying to back out of it right now.
Okay. Well, thank you that was really brave. Thank you for sharing that. I don't take that lightly at all. And I'm sorry that happened.
Well, thank you for that. And I don't know, is it being a man and being in that space is weird because, it's different than NASCAR. It's different, at least to me, it seems like it. So it's super weird still to me, and I'm still struggling with it all. But let's get out of this space.
But we can go wherever you want to go with that.
But I do think it's important still we should have called them out and something should have been done. Mm-hmm. And none of us did. It was a joke. Right? Oh, you got diddled. That's what happened when you got your physical and all these other things. And
wow,
I don't know. The boys, I guess, dealt with it differently. Maybe not. I don't understand the dynamic yet. I probably need years and years of therapy. Yeah. But everyone should get a therapy checkup at least once a year.
Absolutely. I'm a huge proponent of therapy. And I mean, there's different stigmas attached to it too. So I can understand why that would be, kind of the common type of social norm in that environment like that. So it's easy to take it on like I should have done this or we should have done that and everything. But what you know today is what you know today, and you can do something based on that, So hopefully one day you can remove the shame or the guilt from what you didn't do and just know that what you're doing now, it does matter and it does make a difference.
That's the most powerful pain point I have is he did it from 88 to 2008. Mm-hmm. And I didn't say enough. And that's probably bullshit too. I'm sorry, I swore. I told you if you got me passionate.
It's okay.
Because our coaches knew and our athletic directors knew and our student advisors knew. They all knew. Everybody knew. But I still felt like I didn't raise my voice enough. And I didn't do enough. And there were probably 20 years worth of victims after me because of that. And 20 years before me. None of us did.
Yeah, that's not on you. That's not your cross to bear. That's theirs. Yeah. So, they were there to protect you. They were there to hold them accountable, right? So that's not something that you can carry with you. They have to be held accountable to that. And that's where, when you have opportunities, you're able to use your voice that matters. you not saying something isn't the reason why this person who was a predator continued to prey on people. It wasn't your fault. That was their fault. They committed a crime against you and whomever else, right? So you can't carry that. That's not yours to carry.
Do you think that if more education on my part would have helped me through that a little bit better?
Absolutely. I believe it would. And I can't guarantee that it would have changed how much you did or did not say, because we all respond to things like that differently. Some are fight, some, retreat, some maybe fall a little bit in the middle. We all respond differently to that type of thing happening to us. But I think it would be helpful if it was clear, and it wasn't a diddle. It was a crime, So, yeah.
Well, usually I pull stuff out of the guests. Guests don't pull stuff out of me. So I think, thank you for doing that. I probably got like relatives right now saying, "What the fuck?" No. So sorry about that, everyone.
It's okay.
But I don't know why that came out today. But
well, I hope I'm glad it did. I hope
I'm okay with it. Well, I've talked to a bunch of people about when and what and all of that. And so this isn't the elegant speech that I had in mind, but it's a thing that happened, and I need to start getting ready to talk about it because it's going to get more public here soon.
Yeah.
So
your community will support you. You got your
so
back.
There's two things on your list. You really helped me. You really changed. You just changed my narrative now, because now it's got to be different. It's out there. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. So back to Daisy chaining the shows together.
Okay.
Yesterday on the show, I had Quaj, and Quaj is a hip hop artist. He's a badass, and I had a great conversation with him. And his question to you is, do you believe it is important to have your friends support just blindly, like they should support you because they're your friend, or is it more important to have their support because they believe in your mission?
So I don't think a true friend wants to be blind with their friend. I think they want to get to know their friend intimately. And so I think blind support from a friend is probably not a friend, because they're not really being that true to you. So yeah, like an informed support, because they care about the things that concern you. They care about the things that you care about. And it doesn't mean that, friends are, and I know sometimes when people talk about support, they're always talking about like business and, patronizing businesses or whatever it may be. I don't think that's necessarily a requirement of friendship, but to just kind of blindly support whatever their friend does, that's not real love. That's not real friendship.
See, my wife and I joke about this a lot, because she'll criticize something I do and I'll be like, "You don't love me," and joking around, and she'll come back, "Well, I love you more because I am telling you, and I'm not letting you go down this false route."
Yeah, exactly.
So I think that's a great question, because on the flip side of that, you'll see people, I'm going to use the wrong word, but I want to use this word. You see people whining on the internet that they are not getting the support from their friends that they are entitled to get from their friendship.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just because your music sucks, or maybe it's because your food's not good, or maybe, what if it's that?
Like it, and it's not their thing, and that's okay,
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe it's kind of a whine, honestly. I use that word. I didn't know that till today, but yeah, it gets a little whiny from my view. But I think it's also like, but does your friend never show up for you? Then that's a problem. Are they not, able to listen? Are they not willing to listen? Are they not willing to kind of bat around ideas if it's something that they have expertise in, or a good perspective that could maybe inform what you're going to do? If that's not happening, then yeah, you probably need some new friends. But if they're not buying your stuff, maybe they're not your target audience, and that's okay. But you also need to be realistic about that too. If you think you're just going to sell things to your friends and your family, you're probably not going to make a living. So yeah, there's a couple different ways to look at that.
Yeah, my wife and I use the same bank account, so if she's buying my stuff, that's not really helping out at the end of the day. That I'm kind of having kind of putting something together that I've been thinking about a lot lately. Our artistic community in Lansing. If you go, we got to go to the pop-ups and we got to support them, and we've got to go here and we've got to support them. But it's always the same people buying each other's art. And where's the rest of the city? How come the non-artists, the non-artist friends, where are they at? And why aren't they showing up? And is it because we just don't have it? Or is it because they don't know? Or is it because they don't support us? But we can't expect the city to just support us blindly as an artist or an entrepreneur or whatever.
Yeah.
You got to earn that at some level, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
And I'm tangled up right now. I don't. Huh?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that one. That's a good question. That's probably more of a question for Tony. I think that's a good one for Tony.
Tony's already been on the show. He already answered all the questions.
That's his ball game.
I got a new show, but I can't talk about it till I talk to Cecil on Saturday. So
okay.
I got a new one coming that Tony will be perfect for. Tony will be perfect for that one. So what question? So my guest tomorrow, I think she's canceling. So I'm not even going to say who it is yet. So I might have an open spot for tomorrow. It'll be one of two spots. So it's a rare spot. So $50 if you want to come on the show. No, I'm just kidding. What question, though? I will have a guest. What question would you like me to pass to that guest?
Oh, I told you and I forgot. Oh, what is one childhood, exciting childhood memory that you think about most often?
And, I can't believe that nobody's ever asked that question before, because, and especially with this, I want to know, she's not canceling, but I can't change the time, Chantel. So that's the problem. So we'll try to figure that out. But Chantel, thank you for being supportive and all of that. We need to talk. Please check your email.
Yay.
But so it might be Chantel. And Chantel is a rock star in pretrial in Ingham County. She helps people that are in pretrial that have arraignments and all of these things. And there's a lot of inequities and unfairness. And she is trying to change that. And I really want her to be on the show, but I don't know if we can make it through. But so I will ask her anyways, what is one childhood memory? Fond memory is what you said. Is that right?
Yes, fond memory.
What about you? What's your memory?
Probably combing baby doll's hair, different baby doll's hair on the porch at my great grandparents' house with my friends. So I think about that a lot. Yeah, just a kid enjoying kid stuff.
See, I'm going to do a TikTok later with this question, and I'm going to answer it myself. And I had my answer already as soon as you asked the question, but you didn't put the fond memory part. Because my earliest childhood memory, I accidentally stuck my foot in the lawnmower when my grandpa was working on it. That's my first memory. I know it. I have it distinctly, and that's horrifying. And it was, but it wasn't. And then I think about. I have two other memories that I might also say. I think about the first time I ever said the N-word when I was super little and didn't understand what it was, and my mother's reaction to that was the only time she ever smacked me.
Wow.
And so I remember that. And then I remember that I thought in fourth grade that 51 was a prime number, and it was the first math question I ever got wrong in my life. And I can't forget it. I'm obsessed with it. It's so stupid. 51 obviously is divisible by 3. But now I got to think of a fond memory.
Yeah, you got to find a good one.
So I'll answer that on TikTok later.
Okay. Awesome.
Happiness, sadness, joy, hope, and or love.
Hope.
Hope. So why hope? What gives you hope? What is hope?
Um, well, hope. What is hope? I don't know if I've ever actually defined hope. That's a good question. Um, but when I think about hope, when you asked me that, I was thinking about how important it is to not lose hope. Um, yeah, just how important it is to not lose hope, and that there's always hope if we don't give up, if we just keep going. Um, yeah, I know we talked about this already, so it is what it is. But my own personal belief is that you can have hope in Christ and in Jesus, and so for me, that's who gives me hope. And one promise that I stick with all the time is um, that we can glory in our sufferings because sufferings produce character, character produces hope, and hope is promised to not put us to shame. So I always say, all right, if I don't lose hope, I'm not going to be put to shame. So you can keep going.
My guest 2 days ago said that hope and faith are very close words, right? That he was more on the other side where he didn't want to say hope because it is too much faith
Mm-hmm.
and it gives people, there's false hope, there's false faith,
Yeah.
right? But I love that you guys are connecting that together like that because that was the very first word I ever asked. I only asked about hope in the
Really?
beginning, and I've added happiness, sadness, joy, and love as I've evolved with the guests and the show has evolved.
Yeah.
And the reason I had hope is because there's an old Russian phrase that says hope is the last to die. And so if you have hope,
Yes.
you got a little bit more fight, you can lift your head a little bit more. And
Yeah.
I used to ask people, have you ever been to a point really where there was zero hope? And if so, how'd you even lift your head up?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Have you been?
Yeah, I've definitely been. I can't think of a specific time right now, but I've definitely been without hope in different points. And then it was once I was able to grab back onto it, I was able to continue on. But I've seen where hope is the last thing to die. And that's why I always try to remind people that they gotta hang on to it and just keep going. And they'll see that it wasn't a waste of time. That it definitely was worth hanging on to. Because when it goes, that's a really, really hard point. That's a hard point.
Hope and optimism are very close
Hmm.
relatives. Are you an optimistic person?
I used to be.
Oh,
I'm,
really?
I'm more now than I was, in recent history. But I think I vacillate between optimistic and pessimistic. It just kind of depends on what we're talking about. But I try. I'm trying to get back to the whole glass half full kind of
Yeah.
outlook on everything.
I'm sometimes I worry I'm too optimistic. I believe in us. I believe in our future. I believe we can change. I believe in, like you said earlier, the people,
Yes.
not the systems. I don't believe in these systems, but I believe in us people and
Yeah.
we can do this.
Yeah.
Did we forget to talk about anything?
I took a couple notes. You asked me for one kind of thing that I could leave people with.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah. Yeah, if you're ready to take us out. I want to say something to you first.
yeah.
Thank you so much. This was not what I thought we were going to talk about today. I
Same.
didn't know what you meant. And I think that your work is extremely important. And thank you for doing it. And we can be on all kinds of parts of the spectrum when it comes to religion and believing and faith and all of that. But we can have conversations with each other where it doesn't have to be a battle, but
Yeah.
how can we align our arrows in a way that makes our future better, that makes our kids healthier, that takes away, stigmas and all these problems that we see. The Nassar's the microcosm of
Yeah.
what uneducated might look like, not on the victim side, but on his side, what, all these things, that something went wrong in
Yeah.
his life somewhere, that, I don't know. I just think the work that you're doing is incredibly important. I didn't know that an hour ago. And for you to share what you've shared, I told you I had a feeling about this show, and that feeling is definitely true. I love this show. And I don't think Tony's ever complimented anybody as much as he just did with you. So,
thank you. Thank you for having me. I didn't expect it to go where it went either, but I'm glad that it did. So thank you for the opportunity. It's been really great.
So what would you like to take us out with?
Oh, a couple of things. So I guess an invitation, as far as doing our first kind of community outreach, big public event on the 25th, from 11 to 3, and it's hosted in the big parking lot at 1518 South Washington Avenue, the Bread House main campus. It's going to be a great day for youth and their families to come and experience and promote optimal health in an interactive way. Optimal health focuses on 5 categories: mental, emotional, social, spiritual, and physical health. And so we have some really exciting things planned for whomever comes to participate, and a couple of things that'll kind of trickle on beyond the event. But it all starts there, September 25th from 11 to 3. And there's information on our website. And then I guess my last thing that I'd love to take everybody out with is just a reminder to be their own best friend. When we talk to kids, sometimes they have the best advice for their best friends, but they don't take it for themselves. And so we always remind them that they could be their own best friend and that they're never without a friend. So yeah, that's it.
You should have hung up on me a long time ago. I didn't see the private comment. Get out of here. I love you. Thank you very much.
It's fine. You actually saved me some grueling time in the pickup line, so I welcomed the delay.
Yeah, but
yeah.
Now I'm freaking out a little bit. Let's get to this. Thank you so much. Thank you so very much, everyone. Chantello and I'll figure out how to do the show tomorrow, and everything's going to be great. And we will see you